All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another BEPP SSIG meeting. We've got with us today an alumni of the University of St. Augustine. So this will be cool. You'll actually get to see a real life journey of an alumni. I was telling them earlier that we are relatively successful. It can be done. And I think you're living proof. So that's good to see. Without further ado, I introduce you guys Dr. Jansen Yamout. Jansen, have at it, man.
How's it going, everyone? Like Dr. Phil was saying, my name is Jansen Yamout. I graduated St. Augustine in 2015. I was the second class of St. Augustine in Austin. So it was a fun ride. I think they were still kind of ironing out the kinks in the beginning, but I kind of enjoyed it. You got to be, we gave our input on how we can improve things, which I liked. And I knew that I wanted to do St. Augustine even when I was in undergraduate. I knew that it was a heavy ortho school because of Stanley Paris. And I had my eyes set on St. Augustine from pretty early on, maybe my third year of undergrad. So yeah, I mean, I've been through what y'all have been through. I think it's a great school. I think it prepares you really well in all of the different settings, but especially ortho. It's a heavy ortho school. And yeah, that's it. I've been practicing 8 years. I did my residency and fellowship after I finished school. I've worked in Houston, I've worked in Los Angeles, and now I'm back in Austin. And I've worked the gamut of different orthopedic clinics, and I've also worked in acute care, post-acute care. I've worked in a SNF, I've worked in home health. Ortho is my primary setting, but those other settings I just worked on the weekend to earn extra money so that I could pay off student loans. So that's where I'm at.
And I get the pleasure of working with this guy teaching as well. He's doing a little bit of lab assist for us now, and hopefully teaching soon too. So um, the possibilities are endless, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something I'm wanting to transition to is teaching. And I think as you go through your career as a therapist, you'll find different things that fill your cup in terms of what makes you happy and what brings you joy. And right now that's teaching. I feel like I've been out long enough to where I have something to give back in terms of teaching and education. So I take students from PT school, I take residents, I take fellows. That's kind of what made me want to switch into teaching. One of my classmates, his name is Ryan Woolley. He also teaches at St. Augustine. He kind of piqued my interest in teaching, and then getting to work with Scott, I've, further just, it's confirmed my want to teach. So I'm kind of slowly dipping my feet in the water with lab assisting on the weekends, which I think has been really fun. So.
Yeah, so let's jump right into this. Let's talk about you graduate, right? You're getting ready to go out into the real world and become a new grad and a physical therapist. And one of the things that students often ask me is about like residency and fellowship, right? And you did your fellowship. Tell us a little bit about that thought process in like why you ended up doing it, like with the thought process you went through on weighing out whether it was worth it or not, and then your experience and what you kind of gained from it.
Yeah, so kind of like St. Augustine, I knew that I wanted to do my fellowship even in undergraduate. And for whatever reason, I just lucked into, I volunteered at 2 clinics, and then I worked at 2 clinics as a tech. And all the clinics I worked at in the beginning, they were all fellowship trained clinicians. So they kind of beat it into my brain of I needed to do it. And I didn't understand in the beginning, like really what it was or how it differentiated you as a therapist. But as I started shadowing other clinics, for me, I thought that there was a difference in terms of quality of treatment, effectiveness, education, confidence between the fellows and the other therapists. And I will say, you do not have to be a fellow to be a good clinician. But if you go through residency and fellowship, it kind of fast tracks you and it gets you up to date. It forces you to learn more, which I think in PT school, it gets you Um, it gives you a little bit of knowledge about a lot of different realms of physical therapy. And then I think specializing obviously further prepares you for different settings. I am an OT student. So yeah, I think again, you don't have to have a fellowship, but I do highly recommend it. And I know that I've talked to Dr. Phil about this plenty. I think right when you finish physical therapy school, you should keep your foot on the pedal with learning, because as you start getting further out, it becomes harder. I think you can still do it, but you still have that fire and you still have that motivation and drive. You're younger, maybe you're not married or have a family yet. That was my situation. So I was able to dedicate a little bit more time to learning. And again, I think I've always been really passionate about physical therapy. So the fellowship just kind of furthered that passion. It allowed me, yeah, just to learn more. And it's something that I would do again in a heartbeat. Like they say, it's the best time that you would never want to do again, because it is a lot of work. It is stressful, but it's good stress. It makes you better. It's like stress. So I think it's invaluable, but again, you don't have to do it to be a good clinician.
Yeah, I think, one of the kind of takeaways here, and again, I'm not anti-residency or fellowship. It just didn't work for me and my life plan and where I was, because when I went to school, it was a master's program, and I stuck around for an extra year to do the transitional doctorate. And it took me 2 extra years to even get into PT school because I was an English major and had to take all those prereqs. So I was already like a little bit older student. I didn't want to waste, I don't want to say waste, but I didn't want to take and spend another year doing like a residency or a fellowship. I just wanted to get out there and work. Plus, things went haywire for me pretty quickly. I mean, I failed the exam a bunch of times. My dad passed away. It was just a mess. And so it just wasn't a good fit for me. Now, in hindsight, I'm having to take the geriatric certified board exam anyway. I don't have to, but it's strongly recommended for CAPT purposes. So I'm sitting for the exam anyway. So here I am, right? Now, tell me a little bit about like the process of, you go out there, you do your fellowship. Are you taking a pay cut for that? Are you owing them any time? How does the fellowship work? Or I know it's different for every fellowship, but like in general, what do fellowships look like if that's something, that you want to pursue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends on how you do it. You could do a formal residency and then you could do a fellowship. If you do a formal residency, like with my company, I work with Texas Physical Therapy Specialist. You can do a residency for a year. You do take a pay cut, or there's two ways you could do it actually. You could take a pay cut and work as a resident for a year, or you could take a full salary, but then you owe the company time afterwards. The fellowship that I did it's called Manual Therapy Institute. It's from San Marcos. It's out of Texas State and San Marcos, which now they've relocated to Round Rock. Um, you're not in a full-time residency. It's a part-time residency. So you're doing classes on the weekend, you're doing coursework in your free time. And that is a year of coursework and a year of like discussion posts and blog posts and like different assignments. And then once you finish that year, you sit for the midterm. There's a midterm written and a midterm OSCE. Once you pass that, you have the second half, which that you can start your fellowship hours. The fellowship that I did is 450 hours of observation. So I had to work 450 hours under somebody mentoring me. And so basically what that looks like, the way that you're able to get your hours is I did 4 10s in the clinic Monday through Thursday to get my clinic hours for my company. And then I did another 10 on Fridays with my mentor to start chipping away at my fellowship hours. Now, I got lucky and I got hired on with the company that my mentor was at. So I left. I was working at Select Physical Therapy at the time. I went to a company called C. Foster Physical Therapy in Houston, and I was able to do my hours a little bit quicker. So with fellowships, they give you 3 to, I believe, 8 years to complete it. So again, like depending on your life circumstance, whatever you have going on in your personal life, if you can't get it done quickly, they do give you time. They extend it out to 8 years, somewhere in there. Now, it depends. There's different fellowships, and I am really frustrated with this decision. So the Federation of Fellowships basically came out with a new ruling that you only have to have 90 supervised hours of mentorship, and they don't even have to be from a fellow anymore, which blows me away because I don't understand. If you are doing a fellowship, I'd want to get trained with someone who did go through that, that has higher learning and has like better themselves, so to speak. So when you're picking your fellowship, I would pick a fellowship that's harder in terms of more observation hours, because that's the difference that you see between residency and fellowship. So there is research on, does residency and does fellowship change your practice patterns and outcomes with patients? They found yes, but only in the case of fellowship. And the discussion on that is, the reason they think that happens is because you learn all this stuff, but then you have to put it into practice with someone monitoring you. And a lot of times, like with OCS or with residency or with other certifications that you do on the weekend, you learn a bunch of stuff and then maybe you take like 1% of it away and use it clinically. But when you have a mentor, they're constantly reinforcing and quizzing you on information that you've learned. So that is what I think is the benefit of a fellowship is, and it's daunting to have someone pick you apart once you're a professional, once you've passed your board exam, once you're a practicing clinician, and now you're still having someone pick you apart. But again, I think it's eustress. It makes you better. And am I talking too much?
No, no. This is your world, man. We're just living in it.
Okay, so with the fellowship, the next question I always get asked is, do you get paid more as a fellow? And the answer is like, kind of, not really. I can't ask insurance for more reimbursement, which I could go into. So European countries, the more experience you have, the more certifications you have, you can actually ask for more reimbursement. Unfortunately, in the US, that's just not the case. But the fellowship did open more doors for me in terms of job opportunities, and you can use it as leverage when you're applying for jobs. So it's not going to be a significant amount more, but you could probably negotiate an additional 10K on top of whatever they're offering, which is my experience, what I've been able to negotiate. Maybe you could get more, maybe you could get less. So directly, no, you don't get paid more money. Indirectly, you get more opportunities and you can negotiate and use it as leverage.
All right. So again, I love this because you are a USA alumni and you already mentioned that we're pretty heavy in ortho, right? So outpatient ortho is just a big part of USA graduates, right? They go on and a lot of times you're going to find them working out in outpatient ortho. Tell us a little bit about working outpatient, like what you love about it, what you don't love about it. And really, what are some things that you wish you knew or like prepared for more when going into an outpatient setting?
I know Dr. Phil has jokingly said there's like ortho bros. That's like the term. And I think I fit in that category. I've always enjoyed working out. I've always enjoyed reading research. Like all things health and wellness, I've enjoyed. That's kind of what pushed me towards physical therapy and more so outpatient. I used to be a personal trainer before. Um, the question was what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's start with what you like and what you found overall, like pros and cons of working at an outpatient setting, because I know that's where you primarily focus.
Okay, yeah. So for me, when I think of physical therapy, I think of outpatient. Like that's what fills my cup. That's what makes me happy. That's what I wanted to do. Um, so I enjoy getting to help people in pain move better because I enjoy moving. I enjoy coaching. I enjoy teaching. Um, and outpatient allows me to do that. And there's a gamut. You could do pediatrics all the way up to your 90-year-old patients. Truthfully, I enjoy the whole gamut. Even like I had a 90-year-old patient today that just wanted to learn how to get off the floor. And I'm like, okay, that is fun to me. That's exciting. I think it's cool people come to you and put their trust in you to teach them on like how to get off the floor. But I also enjoy like complex ortho cases like cervical radiculopathy where you're having to evaluate the neck and the scalenes and CT junction and first rib and shoulder and back. I mean, so there's the higher level critical thinking and then there's the lower level critical thinking, and I enjoy all of that. And so I've always worked in a general orthopedic clinic. There's different settings within ortho. There's like general ortho, there's sport, there's geriatric, there's pediatric ortho, there's hospital ortho. So there's different ways that you can go. I am more of just a general orthopedic. If you have neck pain, you come see me. If you have back pain, you come see me. If you have knee pain, you come see me.
All right. So what about the downside to outpatient ortho? What have you found to be a negative side of outpatient?
So I know that you and I have talked about this extensively. I just want to preface this. I love physical therapy. I'm still passionate about it, but there are problems in that the reimbursement rate. So when I started applying to physical therapy school, or when I started getting interested in physical therapy schools, 2008, physical therapy was ranked as the second highest job in terms of satisfaction and happiness. And in my head, I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly what I want to do. I never joined physical therapy to be rich, but I also thought if I'm getting a doctorate, I'm going to make a decent living. I don't think I'm going to be rich by any means, at least if I'm only treating. The reason I say that is from 2008 till now, the reimbursement rates have gone down every year. Dr. Phil, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Medicare cuts 2% every year of reimbursements.
Yeah, approximately.
Approximately. So over the past 10 years, that's almost a 20% cut in reimbursement. Medicare paves the path because they're such a big entity. They have so much data that whatever they do, typically the other insurances follow suit. So along with Medicare, all the other insurances have cut their rates a little bit. I think Blue Cross is still the best payer. Anyways, so with that, you have to see more patients, unfortunately. And there's different settings. Like if you worked for like a Select Physical Therapy or a Texas Physical Therapy Specialist or another general orthopedic clinic, they're contracted with insurances. There's no rhyme or reason, but typically per patient, you're going to see $80 no matter what you bill. So if you bill $500 to the insurance, you're going to get about 80 of that back. And I work in Lakeway, maybe down the road 5 miles, they bill the same thing and they might get 85, and down the road they get 90, and some people get 100. There's no rhyme or reason. We've looked into this. But generally speaking, you're going to get 80. If you work for an outpatient clinic that's attached to a hospital, like if you work for Baylor Scott and White, you'll probably see about $150 of reimbursement. So the reason I'm saying all that is the industry standard to keep the lights on, to pay the bills, to pay all the therapists, to pay the front desk, to mow the lawn, to pay the internet, to pay the EMR, you're going to have to see about 14 patients a day, which means you're probably scheduled 17. And a lot of people say, oh, that's a mill. It's not a mill. Unfortunately, that's the industry standard now. I personally don't mind it. I think if you're a good therapist, you can treat 14 people effectively and you can finish I never take documentation ever home. I haven't taken documentation home in probably 10 years or 8 years. But it does get frustrating at times when you want to give a little bit more care to a specific patient. But I will say conversely, I've been at clinics that treat one patient an hour, and that gets kind of boring. So it's like finding a middle ground of both of those. Like you're not going to find a 6-figure job in outpatient your first year in Austin. And if you do, I hope you do, but I just don't think that's the case. So the pay is a little bit lower. You're working hard. There is a ceiling. There is a ceiling that you hit pretty quick. You get maybe a 2 to 3% raise every year. And then let's say you become clinical director, you get a little bump in pay. But there is a ceiling that you hit pretty quick. So that's another problem. And I think Dr. Phil has talked about this plenty, but he's like, you got to make it work. If you're coming out with a lot of debt, let's say you're coming out with 150K in debt and you're getting paid 65K in your job. So like, am I talking too much again?
No, like I said, man, it's your world. We're just living in it.
Let me make sure I got better. Okay, so as a quick breakdown, what you could do is you could take 65 grand, you can multiply that by 0.64. That usually gives you what you're going to make after taxes and after all the takeaways from the company. and you divide that by 12, and you divide it again by 2, and that gives you your paycheck every 2 weeks. So at 65 grand, you're probably making $2,100 every 2 weeks. If you have $1,000 student loan payment, that's a quarter of your paycheck already gone. You have a $1,500 rent payment, which would be good in Austin. It's another quarter of your paycheck gone. If you have a car payment and bills and groceries, it's slowly the $4,300 that you would take away as a new grad gets eaten up very quickly, especially in Austin. So you got to make it work financially. Are you going to work another job? Are you going to open your own clinic? Are you going to take a higher paying setting like home health or in a cash pay clinic? You just got to make it work financially.
Yeah, I think, obviously the biggest issue that we're seeing now is debt to income ratio for PTs, right? You want to try to keep it at about 1 or less. So if you're making 100,000 a year and you have 100,000 in student loan debt, you're about that 1-to-1 ratio, right? If you're, making 120,000 and you only have $75,000 worth of student loan debt, you're in the green. You're pretty good to go there. If you have $200,000 worth of student loan debt and you're only making 65, you're in a bad spot. You're going to be underwater, right? You're just not going to be able to stay above float. You're never going to be able to catch up. So yeah, I'm a big fan of like finding a job in a setting you love and then supplementing it and finding the difference you have to elsewhere. But that's just me. That's my own personal take on things. Unfortunately, Austin is a very popular city and people just want to come and live here. So they'll take a lowball offer and they'll work in Austin to start with just to get their foot in the door. And so they can pay, especially their new grads lower because everybody wants to work here. And if you won't take a lowball offer, somebody else will. And there's a couple of cities like that. I mean, there's a lot of cities where PTs just get paid garbage because either that's just the way it is. Like Pittsburgh's another one, right? That one of the top 5 PT schools in the nation is Pitt. And they historically have an average pay rate of like 65 to 75,000 for PTs coming out as new grads, right? And so look at the bigger picture here, right? And it's like you have to find a city and a setting that works for you where you're going to make a decent amount of money, but then also you want to be happy, right? Because again, you can make 100, 120, 150,000 even doing home health, but if you're miserable, what good is that? I would not want to do that, and I would much rather you take the lower pay, be happy, but then supplement it with something else. So that being said, let's go into one more kind of question before we open up the floor here. But what about like things that you wish you knew or you had prepared? What prepared you for like the real world and like going into an outpatient setting? And, what are some things you wish you knew, some pearls of wisdom for people that are getting ready to graduate and go out into the workforce?
Some things I wish I would have done as a new grad is asked to shadow the clinic I'm going to work at. I think working with people 40 hours a week, you have to almost be able, I think it should be like a friendship. You should almost be able to be friends with these people. I wish I would have shadowed because the first clinic, it just wasn't a good fit for me in terms of the environment. I wish I would have known that. I wish I would have known like what a progression of my career could look like in outpatient in terms of like, what's the ceiling? How quick can I get there? I wanted to comment on one of Dr. Field's previous statements. In Austin, again, the standard that you should be getting paid in outpatient as a new grad is about 75 grand. I would not take anything less than 75K. I think that is taking advantage of you. So I would make sure if you go into outpatient in Austin, you're at least getting 75. Some other things I wish I would have known.
What about the interview process or like questions that you came to the table with, or, just things that the whole process of just like looking for that new job and like going on interviews and doing those things?
Yeah, so I would definitely ask if you could come shadow them. I would ask what the caseload is. I think another good question is, how can I be successful in this job role? I would ask if there are what does my plan look like? Am I going to be a staff there? Is your goal for me to be a staff therapist for 10 years? Is your goal for me to be a staff therapist for a few years and then train me to become a CD? Um, Also, maybe come up with some personal goals for yourself before you interview. Like, do you want to be a staff therapist and then a CD? And then is that company going to offer you those opportunities? I would also ask what their, I would personally go on with a company that supports your endeavors in terms of learning. Like, some companies will offer like $500 towards CEUs. Personally, I would attach myself, if you're doing outpatient, to a clinic that pushes residency, that pushes fellowship, that pushes other CEUs, because that's going to be the environment that really gets you good, because everyone is in the same mindset. They want to get better. They want to learn more. There's going to be a lot of good conversation between you and other clinicians. So I would personally go to a clinic where everyone else is bettering themselves. So like with OCS, SCS, fellowship, residency, whatever it is.
Yeah. Good takeaways. All right, let's open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions out there?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So when you offer a new grad, let's say a 75,000 or in between 65 to 75, what are some good strategy to negotiate your salary and benefit?
I would say it depends on the company. So there's some companies that are very rigid, like we only pay 75 grand. There's no wiggle room. I would say typically the salary is, from my experience, pretty rigid as a new grad, because there, it's hard to leverage yourself as a new grad. So, excuse me, you could probably negotiate $3,000 to $5,000 of salary. But like what we do is we can negotiate your
I lost your audio there a minute.
Oh.
I can't hear you still. Sorry, guys. There we
Can
go.
you hear me?
Yep, I got you back.
Okay. So there's not a lot of wiggle room as a new grad for salary, but you could negotiate potentially a sign-on bonus. I could say, hey, I'll give you 10 grand as a sign-on bonus, but you also have to sign a contract with me. It's kind of like an insurance policy that you're not going to just take my sign-on bonus and run, because sign-on bonuses, we amortize over a year. So if I give you 5 grand, we have to make 5 grand somewhere. So basically what our clinic does is we chop up 5 grand over 12 months. So every month I'm paying in towards the bonus that I give the person that I hire. So we say, hey, I'll give you $5,000 or $10,000, but you owe us maybe a year or 2 years. And if you leave before, then you have to pay it back, unfortunately. Or you could negotiate like how much they pay for CEUs, or how much are they going to pay for your OCS? Are they going to pay for your fellowship? Typically, from what I've seen, you can't really negotiate PTO days. Maybe you could, but that is an option.
I would also say, if you're looking to make more money, show the clinic how you can be valuable in bringing them in more money. So where is your value to that clinic? Is it, do you know how to run Facebook ads? Are you good at advertising? Are you, hooked into a group or something in the community that you can bring in new patients? Like, show them ways that you can stand out from the crowd, because there's a million, new grad people out there looking to get jobs, right? They're all going to be the same. Like, hey, we all just graduated. We don't really have much differentiators. Show some things that can differentiate you, that can bring in more money, because that's the bottom line, right? They have to have X amount of dollars every month to keep the lights on and keep a roof overhead. So how are you going to bring them in money to do that, and then go above and beyond that? If you can do that, that sets you up, above and beyond all the pool of new grads that are just new grads.
100%. And a way that you can think about that too is, I've actually been asked that, like, what value can you bring to the company? So that's a good interview question to go over. But just for example, let's say we hire you on at $80,000, and then you have benefits, and then 401k. So the package of me hiring you is probably about 95. It's going to cost the company about 95 to 100k. So then you have to think of the delta, which basically delta means, and they have to make money off you, right? So you're costing the company $100,000 to get hired. Let's say they want to make $20,000 off you in profit. How are you going to make them $120,000? So you could think about taking $120,000, divide by that 80 number that I gave you, which is approximately how much you're going to get paid per patient. That gives you how many patients you have to see just for them to break even. So is it realistic for you to ask for $85,000 as a new grad? Probably not, because you're going to have to ramp your caseload up. So it's just a way to think about, if you can't bring the company, if you're asking for $80,000, what other ways, like Dr. Field was saying, can you bring value to the company? Like, are you going to commit yourself to higher learning? Are you going to commit yourself to marketing? Are you going to commit yourself to mentoring? Whatever it is, just come up with different angles on how you can help the company, because it has to make sense for the company to hire you on as well.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
What other questions do you guys have?
I have a question. You had mentioned something about contracts. Are contracts a fairly common thing that you're seeing nowadays in the industry, or is that kind of maybe more like a new hire with like the signing bonus, or just in general?
Dr. Phil and I have talked about this quite a bit. So if you're getting a sign-on bonus, or they're paying for a residency and or fellowship, there's typically a contract to where if they pay for it and you leave before then, you have to pay it back, because that prevents you from getting signed on with a company, getting your 10 grand and then leaving, and then going to the next company, getting your 10 grand, going to the next company. So it's kind of an insurance policy for them. If they're paying all this money towards you, if they're investing towards you, they want a return. So that is one way. The other way is a non-compete. Those are the two most common ways that I see companies trying to retain the clinician. I'd be careful with non-competes. Some of them are pretty aggressive, like you can't work within, let's say it's a 5-mile radius, but it's a company that has 10 clinics. I mean, that shuts you out of the city. Depending, some companies it's 5-mile radius within the one clinic you're at. Some companies it's 5-mile radius with any clinic that the company owns, which is ridiculous. If they're doing that, I would not sign on with that company, because that will shut you out of the city.
Definitely. I've been a contracted service employee, client-based person before, and I didn't know, because I know in that industry there was never any room to negotiate contract terms. So because with the signing bonus, yes, I can see the appeal and wanting to have that contract, but I know in the contracts that I would sign, there would be benefits and all the little other things that they had to offer. And I didn't know if that was in the physical therapy world, if the contract was just based on the sign-on bonus, or if it's like a work kind of like what we're going to offer you for what you're going to give us type contract, if that makes any sense.
No, it's more of a contract just for the money. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, it is.
I had a comment on that.
Yeah, I'm a huge antagonist for non-competes. I would never sign a non-compete ever for anybody. And it's not, in physical therapy, it's kind of hard to enforce those, because what we do is not proprietary. Like, physical therapists don't have like a proprietary treatment. Like it's a profession. So like, it can be argued in the court of law, but it takes a lot of time, a lot of money, lawyers going back and forth, and it's just not worth it. If somebody wants you to sign a non-compete, again, either something sketchy's going on and they're trying to like keep and hold on to all the patients they have, and like, me, very closed mindset, very selfish. Like that's not somewhere I really want to work. But yeah, like Jansen said, like, they got 10 clinics, that's quite a radius they set out there. So it's just not worth it. The the thought behind a non-compete is that if you leave us, you're not going to take your patients with you. You know, like you're not going to take our patients and go down the road and open your own clinic, right? And truth be told, like I'd be fine with that. Like I would just leave and not take patients and start my own thing. And eventually, if patients like me enough, they would leave that place and come to me anyway. And I would have, 100% like, hey, there's no proof that I took that patient. They literally came to me. Like, I that's not how I would operate. That's not how I work. I feel like there's plenty of patients out there for everybody. So, I would go about a different way. So if somebody wants you to sign a non-compete, I would really question it hard as to why, and then if it's even worth it, even if there's a good reason, if it's even worth it. So
and to Dr. Field's point, I don't know that I've ever seen someone leave a company and take all the patients away from that company. It would be very difficult. A lot of times patients are going to a clinic because it's closest to them and because it's convenient, it's cheap. So like if you open your own clinic, I don't think I've ever seen someone do that and take the caseload away from that clinic. It's just not practical. And to Dr. Field's point, if they are making you sign a non-compete, I think it's probably for other nefarious reasons to where I would question the company. And going back to one of the questions earlier, one of the things that I wish I would have asked is, like, why did the person before me leave? It's kind of an aggressive question, but it's a good one. And I think it's worth asking, because if they can't give you a straight answer, that's not a good sign.
plus a lot of turnover is not a good sign as well. If they're, having to hire 3 or 4 new people in the last 3 or 4 months, are you just expanding and growing, or are you replacing people that constantly leave? Like, what's the deal? You got to do a little bit of deep dive digging, and that's why shadowing is good too. If you can get in shadow and ask questions to somebody who works there, that helps.
Yeah, I would make sure that that the company's wanting to invest in you as a professional, and that you're not just a body. There are some clinics that just hire you as a body. I won't name names, but there is a chain company in Austin, and from what I understand, each clinician is seeing anywhere between 30 and 60 patients a day. That you would just be a body in that situation. So I think if you shadowed that clinic, you would know, hey,
not for me.
There is someone I met at St. Augustine that works for this company as a tech. She was saying they see 70 patients per clinician a day, which I don't even know how that's possible.
There's no way.
Yeah.
What?
That
There's no
patient
way.
that patient experience will not be great.
It's the patient experience, the clinician experience.
Yeah.
How do you document on 70 people? I can't even remember what I had for lunch, and you're telling me I got to remember 70 people worth of notes? Like, get out of here.
And that is an extreme example, but I just wanted to highlight that it is possible that you could be hired as a body, and I would not go to one of those clinics.
Yeah. I saw when I was a student, I did a clinical rotation at an outpatient / aquatic center that was a chain. It was a quote unquote mill clinic, and we were seeing 25 to 30 patients a day per clinician. Wasn't a good time. Wouldn't recommend. But that was, it was a clinical rotation. I knew it was a couple weeks. I just smiled and nodded and went on my way.
I've heard, did you have a question? Sorry.
I did want to ask, kind of what was your transition like to kind of getting into the management area of PT? Did you kind of know you always wanted to do that, or was it kind of something you learned from like your fellowships and like the people you shadowed? Like, did they kind of like prompt you to look more into that field, or did you kind of always know you wanted to go there?
Sorry, 1 second. Let me plug my computer in. It's about to die.
I'll give you my 2 cents. I went right after I traveled for a year. I worked for a hospital system and an outpatient clinic attached to the hospital. I did that for about 8 months, and then I got moved up to clinic director. And it was my own little satellite clinic out in the middle of nowhere, kind of, and it was fine. But truth be told, I had to manage the front desk, an OT part-time, a speech therapist part-time, and another PT part-time. And it was 4 women, none of which got along, and then myself. And so it was managing personalities more than anything. And that was not worth the $8,000 or $10,000 bump in pay I got. It really wasn't. That was just my experience. I don't know, Jansen, how your transition went, but I got out of there, pretty quick. I think I was there 2 or 3 years, and then I headed down the road to Savannah, Georgia for a larger paycheck.
I totally agree. It's a lot about managing personalities. And just as a forewarning, I realized that my computer charger's at work. So if my computer dies,
Nice.
I'll hop back on my phone. I always knew that I wanted to be a director because I feel like one of my weak points was being a leader going into PT school. So I'm like, I also want to learn how to do that, become better at that. So I was always trying to take the opportunity. I was always asking about the CD role. The company I got hired on with my fellowship, I was 2 years into working. They hired me as a clinician, but then one of the directors quit, like literally walked out like a week into me working. So I got to fill that spot. So I kind of fell into it. I was still a young clinician, which there was a big learning curve. But yeah, I mean, I like what fills my cup is treating, but then also, like Dr. Field was saying, managing people is a whole different challenge. We could go into that in depth. I did a lot of reading, a lot of researching, a lot of podcasting. I'm still learning. I think leadership is one of those things that you're always constantly just like sharpening your pencil or sharpening your tool set. And at this point, this may sound, I just don't want someone else managing me at this point in my life. So there is a lot of extra headache in terms of managing personality, paperwork. If the clinic does well, good job on you. If the clinic does poorly, it's your fault. So there is more stress, but for me, all that additional stress is worth it because I don't want someone managing me. So the environment that I like to have in the clinic is we're all kind of friends. We all get along. We work really hard so that no one is on our back ever. The clinic does well. No one is looking in at us through a microscope. So as long as we're doing well, we're good. No one's going to be micromanaging us like the higher ups, like the CEOs and the regional managing partners and all that.
Yeah, and at some point you tend to find out and realize that you're almost unemployable. Right now you're at the I'm not manageable stage. Sometimes you just become unemployable even. You're like, I got to do this my own way, and that's when people tend to start to go out and start their own business or open their own clinic or whatever it may be.
That's exactly where I'm at. Literally, I'm having this thought every day of like, how can I make a move into that role?
Yeah. And it's not a thing either, you got to plan for that. That's something that doesn't happen overnight. So go ahead, Ian. Sorry.
A question on top of that. So as a clinic director, how do you market your clinic and how do you make the connection and network with physician for referral?
So that's a good question. It depends on which company you get hired with. I do think the bigger chain clinics, they're well-oiled business machines in most cases. So they're going to have
It's all right. I'll send him the Zoom link to his phone. Just when we were getting to the good part. But yeah, a lot of those chain physical therapy type places, they're marketing monsters. They have so much marketing dollars behind them that they can just spend that kind of money on it.
So, Dr. Field, so for a smaller clinic or a privately owned clinic, how well they make that network? How can they network with the physician and how can they get that referral to compete with this monster, 500 plus chain?
Yeah. So you actually don't want to go to the doctors for referrals if you're a mom and pop solo type clinic. Like you want to go direct to consumer. So you're not going to I mean, you can still go to doctors for referrals, but that should not be your number one referral source. If you're a mom and pop type clinic, if you're just a one man show or a small brick and mortar, you're going to want to go direct to consumer. So word of mouth, community involvement, webinars and live classes and events, educational sessions like injury prevention sessions, just whatever your niche is, you want to really lean into that and go directly to them. Facebook ads, Google ads, SEO, that kind of stuff. Because you're not going to be able to compete with the marketing dollars behind a large chain. You're just not. So your relationships with doctors will be a little bit different in that, it should be more of like a personal relationship. You should have your patients telling your doctor what an amazing job you're doing, their doctor, so to speak, and that he should be referring people or she should be referring people over to you. So like you give them the Disney experience when it comes to physical therapy, and then have them spread the word for you. They call it super fans, So if you generate a bunch of super fans, they'll spread the word for you. Word of mouth is one of the biggest benefits that you'll have, because you will maybe only be seeing 6 to 8 patients a day. You will have that one-on-one. You won't have 30 to 40 patients a day or whatever it may be, but like I said, marketing dollars behind a larger chain, it's going to be hard to compete with, and you don't really want to compete with that. It's almost like two different settings almost. So
I think, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
I think that is a huge clinical pearl that Dr. Phil just said, in that if you're a mom and pop shop, you really are going to have a hard time competing with a company like mine or a company like Select or ATI, one of these bigger chain companies. So you want to find a niche and get really good. You want to roll out the red carpet, because the best referral source is word of mouth. Another good one is asking for Google reviews. I look at Google reviews. It sounds ridiculous, but build your own clinic, get a lot of really good Google reviews, and people start coming to you. Like in my case, I have a marketing team that puts me in front of a lot of different physicians, which is nice. It's easy. I just show up. The hard part of opening your own clinic is marketing. How do you market? Do you do it on social media? Do you do it through advertisements? Do you do it boots on the ground, going to physicians? Do you go to soccer clubs and high school events and set up a tent? What do you do? That is the hard part. If everyone could get patients, everyone would have their own cash pay clinic. That's the difficult part of being a business owner.
Yep. Agree. Any other questions?
Also, yeah, I know I had mentioned to you in class about your TikTok page. Kind of how'd you get into that? Because I know I'm not sure if you wanted to bring it up, but you got quite a bit of like followers, a little bit of clout on there. I just wanted to know kind of how you use that to kind of leverage your business, and how you kind of got into that like social media world too.
So the company I moved to Los Angeles to help open some cash pay clinics for a company. They're very big in social media. I really don't like social media. I don't like posting. I don't like filming myself. So I was like kind of against it. And then one of the new clinics that I was running was not doing well. And I'm like, well, I wonder what I can do outside of everything else. It's a cash pay clinic. Like Dr. Phil was saying, you don't go to a doctor and say, hey, refer me patients, and also tell them I don't take insurance and charge $220 a visit. That's not realistic. So I started posting on social media, and a few of the videos I posted went viral. The more you post, you start to learn what people want, which sounds ridiculous, but like for me, I realized like a lot of people like when I talk about foot pain. Okay, to what level do I talk about foot pain? Do I talk about it super in depth, or do I talk about very surface level? Okay, they like me talking about foot pain surface level. When do they like me talking about foot pain? Oh, like Wednesday night is a good time to post about foot pain for whatever reason. So the more you start posting, you start getting like in tune with the algorithm, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. I don't even know if people use Facebook anymore, but from that, I put like a link on my TikTok, and then I had people sign up to be coached or counseled, because one of the issues I was running into, I only had licenses in Texas and California. So if someone messaged me from Florida wanting me to evaluate them, I couldn't really do that, right? Because I have to be licensed in the state of Florida. So I said, it's kind of a gray area. I would say I could coach you, I could help you work out, I could give you some workout tips, but I can't really fully assess and diagnose pain. So that was the issue that I was running into. I had a friend that got licensed in every state and was doing social media stuff and did well. I haven't posted in a long time, but I was writing out, I've been journaling all week about getting back into it because I do want to start building it up again. But I was charging people $150 for an hour consult. And it was a way to make a little bit of extra money.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm not social media savvy at all, so I was just really interested in that. I'm like, dang, that's just another avenue that I could try to get better at.
I think if you want to do it, there's no secret. You could be successful. I think the secret is consistency. Just doing it over and over and over and over again. Anyone could do it. If I can do it, you can do it. You just got to be consistent. And it'll probably be disheartening at times because you're like, no one likes this stuff, no one's watching. But over time, you'll start to build and you'll get good at what does well and what does not do well.
Yeah, good takeaway, man. All right, any other questions? I want to be respectful of Jansen's time.
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Yep.
I was curious as far as like salary negotiations. How long did it take you to feel comfortable bringing that up during like interview processes and like actually feeling confident that you deserved it?
It's a good question. Honestly, for me, it's after I finished my fellowship. That was a big bargaining tool for me because I'm like, I think there's a fraction of a percent of clinicians that actually do that. And I thought, hey, I've pushed myself very hard to get good. I know that I'm a good clinician. I know that I can get good outcomes. I know that I have good soft skills. I know what my worth is. And if you don't value me as a fellowship trained clinician, then I don't want to work here. And there's some companies that don't value it, believe it or not. The first company I worked for didn't want me to do a fellowship because it took time away from me treating in the clinic, which it really didn't. But they just didn't. I think their fear was I would leave for a company that treated me better, which I did. So once I earned that, I thought, hey, I'm at the top in terms of orthopedic clinicians, and I feel like I should be compensated for that.
All right, any other questions? Nope. All right, well, hey, Jansen, thank you so much, man, for your time, for again being a USA grad and an alumni and showing us the path to success for these alumni soon to be. And thanks for giving back to the university, to the profession. And yeah, man, looking forward to your journey and seeing where you go from here.
Yeah, if anyone has any more questions after this, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help after this. I like talking physical therapy stuff, so if you email me, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I like helping people when I can.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice meeting y'all or seeing y'all.